me again. So I'm going to follow on from the International Print Exchange introduction to deliver the first workshop that we're going to look at over the next 3 weeks. And these are image making techniques that might not necessarily be the main print technique that you use, but that give you some ideas for the prints that you're going to create. So the first one is emulsion printing. The reason I've chosen it is because it's got lots of scope for using different techniques in it. So you can incorporate photography, printmaking, textiles, all of those things into this one technique. So I'm hoping you're going to like it. So as a rundown, last week we handed in your fashion unit, brilliant. I'm going to mark that, give you some feedback, and we'll go from there based on resubs and not resubs and whatever's happening. This week we're going to go through the new technique. So our key inspiration for this is the artist Lotta Pia Kallio. She uses a range of techniques in her work, textiles, printmaking, to create these they're often personal stories. These are called souvenir dolls that are on here, but she also creates 2D images. But the reason I've picked these is because these use the emulsion printing technique. So the faces that we've got on here and the central image really clearly shows that technique. You'll notice that it's a ghostly, faded, love-worn type of image, and that's because of the emulsion that we print onto. So emulsion, just like regular wall paint, is used as a primer to transfer images onto. And so we tend to use photocopied images because the toner in the photocopy sticks to the emulsion and leaves this ghost print on the surface. And so we're going to use that hopefully today to A, learn the technique, but B, experiment with the different kinds of mixed media approaches that we could take, and think about what ideas this gives us for our own printmaking project. Okay. So we've got a couple of prep tasks to do before we get going with the demo. The first one is to gather your images. These can either be pre-photocopied images, but I get that we're in an online week and you're not always going to have access to the photocopier. So any printed images are fine. So I've suggested even blocks of colour from junk or not junk mail. So here's a bank letter from the Nottingham Building Society. Not that that's relevant, don't know why I told you that, but here's a bank letter. And that's got a really large block of colour on it. Text, when it's really close together, could almost be used as a block of colour. Think about when we do cross-hatching or we do fill with stitch. It doesn't have to be a bold opaque colour. We could use blocks of text and cut shapes out of them, and they act as a colour. So think about what you can find. Go through your recycle bin, think about maybe some past project work that you've photocopied already that you could use. Anything that we can essentially get a bit of black or colour from is going to be useful. Prep task 2 is think about the surfaces that we're going to print onto, and we need to bear one thing in mind with this, and that's that all of our surfaces need to be porous. So they need to be able to have a liquid soak into them, and that's because the emulsion paint has to soak in and dry in order for us to do this print. And so some suggestions that I've got are wood, so anything like wood, MDF, works really well. Fabrics, so think about different fibres and textures, and we can play around with the effects they create. And then think about printed papers, so think about like a corrugated cardboard box from your Amazon delivery, or think about magazine pages that are slightly glossy. Think about things that have got pattern and texture on there so that we can experiment with the effects that they create. Once you've gathered all of these, we've got the video demo, so I'll send this in our chat and I'll post this PowerPoint so that you've got the clickable link if you need to access it. Here's a large scale image of the rubbing away process in emulsion printing. I mention it on the video and I demonstrate it on the video, but you might not be able to see very close up the effect that it creates. So I wanted to pop this on here so that you can see. I've rubbed away a section of the paper and you can see that kind of ghostly image which is left behind. So once we've done our first try of this to get the technique right and to see what happens when we use this technique, I want us to start experimenting with our image making. And I've got some examples here from two artists, Emulsion and Lotta Pia Kallio, and they've given me some ideas about how we could experiment. Obviously you can try whatever you want to, but if you're struggling for starting points, give these a shot because they might prompt different ideas and different directions that you want to take your work in. So the first one is layering images. This is the bottom left hand image. And this is thinking about creating maybe new narratives or stories by layering different shapes and images together. The second thing is about cutting and collaging blocks of text and colour to make an image. So this is the top left image, and this is where we might not already have a pre-existing image. If we take blocks of text and colour and essentially make an image with them as if we were collaging it together, we can start to experiment with how colour and texture work with each other. And then the third thing that I thought about was stitching into our images. So once they're dry, we could start using hand stitch embellishment techniques to delineate areas, to highlight certain aspects, or to layer an entirely new image on top, so we get that kind of double layered narrative going on. So think really carefully about what you want to say with your image, what ideas it gives you, and how you think it's best to do that. Final task is to review what you've done, whack it in your workshop, book, file, collection of papers, whatever you've decided to gather all your workshop work together with. And then I'd like you to send me a photo on Teams of the most exciting thing that you've produced today and tell me what ideas it gives you. Maybe it gives you an idea about creating an emulsion print so that you can put that onto a screen and then print it. So you're starting to develop the technique with other printmaking processes. Maybe it gives you an idea about how to present photographs. Maybe it gives you an idea about the kind of aged effect you want to create. So think about what it tells you. There's no right or wrong. There's nothing that I'm expecting to hear. I want to see what you got from the process and what ideas it gives you. And just for funsies, here's what I'm going to be doing while I'm waiting for you. So here's me staring at my screen at the end of the session, waiting to see what you've done. And this is what happens when it's like 5 minutes past the end of the session and you haven't sent me anything. This is what happens, guys. So send me your stuff. I want to see it. I'm excited about what you can produce. I want to talk about your ideas and share thoughts. So don't make me cry. Send me some stuff.